Moms Unfiltered, your messy, real-life podcast for those of us who aren't exactly homeschool Pinterest perfect, for today's episode of Unschooling Doesn't Mean Uneducated. So I'm your host, Amanda, and today we've got my fabulous co-host, Meagan, and a special guest, Karla Marie Williams of Simply Karla Marie and Homeschool Gone Wild. But before we dive in, let's go ahead and do our quick weekly recap. I'm struggling already. So you're looking pretty put together today, Meagan. Is everything going smoothly on the East Coast?
I feel like it is fairly smooth. I've said for like a couple of days now, I'm going to try to get to bed at a reasonable hour. And tonight, that's my thing. My husband left for the airport this morning at 3. He got up at 3:15 and left at 3:45 for a flight. And I just heard him. So I'm like, tonight I'm determined to get to bed early. But Amanda and I are in our group chat, and a mutual friend has turned me on to this Netflix thing about the Dallas cheerleaders. And I said, I've specifically been avoiding it. And she said, it's like a train wreck. You just have to watch it. And so I was like, oh, I do love a good train wreck. So that's my big night planned. I'm going to like get a snack, cuddle up with the dog, and watch the train wreck on Netflix. How about you, Amanda?
Yeah, so I have, I don't know, like 4 loads of laundry that still need to be folded. I've got at least 5 that need to be done. We have recording now, and then as soon as we're done recording with this, I have like a 6-hour board meeting I have to go to where people are going to yell at me for hours about all kinds of things that I don't actually have control over. So it's awesome on the West Coast. It's great. I'm really looking forward to today.
I feel like somebody should sniff your usual mug that you bring, because I feel like, are you like pre-gaming that board meeting? Is there alcohol in your cup already? Because if not, you might want to start soon.
Right? And tea is not going to cut it today.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah. So let us know in the comments how you are doing today. But on to our topic for the day. Unschooling does not mean uneducated. And I think that is one of the huge misconceptions without homeschooling. In fact, not even kind of in my mental plan of what I wanted to talk about, but there was a post in a Facebook group today, a mom who said, oh, my kid hasn't logged in the entire year. He kept telling me he was doing stuff. I don't know if you saw that post, Amanda, did you?
Yeah.
And hadn't logged in the whole year and was telling the mom, and I guess the mom never checked. And this lady commented, it was like, unschoolers don't do anything all year long. Just say you unschooled him. And I was like, oh, there's that misconception, right? So, like, I mean, hey, I'm an
clutching my
mom.
pearls.
Thank you, Karla, right? I mean, I'm an unschooling mom, and way back in our first episode, we talked about those quizzes that say, what kind of homeschooler are you? And when my quiz after quiz actually told me that I was an unschooler, I very clearly remember thinking, I can't just not educate my kid. That's insane. Like that's just not a thing, right? And I completely disregarded unschooling. So I'm excited for our topic today. And Karla's like the queen bee of unschooling. So I'm super excited you're here, Karla. There's 2 kind of like unschooling gurus that I've looked at in my journey. People who have kids who are older than me, Karla being one of them. And it's like one of those things where you're looking at what somebody's grown kids are doing and you're going, how do I work backwards to accomplish that? And so I'm super excited because Karla was kind of one of those people for me. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty of unschooling and start with all of our questions, Karla, I would love it if you could just tell us a bit about yourself, your family, how you became an unschooler, just like give us the Karla download, right?
Oh, well, thank you, ladies, for having me. I am honored to be here. Wow. Where did we come from? We started way back in the prehistoric. No, I'm kidding. It was homeschooling for us, first off, was an emergency, in my husband and I's attempt to save our oldest daughter. We just felt like, we had tried several schools and it just was not a fit. And then we got to the point where public school at all was not a fit for her, that she needed something completely different, that no school, no teacher, no matter how many we tried, was going to be able to accommodate her needs as a learner. And so we just were like, okay, we got to do this ourselves. And we became warriors, and it was miserable. And I brought her two brothers at the time. I had 3 kids at the time that we just, did school at home, death by workbook. kind of learning, and it was miserable. I hated it. My kids hated it. My husband was tired of hearing about it. And of course, as husbands are fixers, his answer to that was send them back to school. And if that was my only option, I had to shut up, stop complaining, and figure it out. And so we did that for like 4 years, 3.5, 4 years before I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then we decided we were going to adopt 3 more children. And I won't tell the long version of the story because that's in my book. But um, I knew that if I hated what I was doing with 3 kids, that I was going to end up in a corner in a straitjacket with 6. And we had decided to bring home 3 more children. And it was like this, and 6 kids under the age of 9 at that point. And so it was like something has to change. So at that time, I had already been watching videos and seeing these crazy people with this really odd thought process regarding learning. And I'm like, they're nuts. Never in a million years would I consider something like that. But I was still drawn to it, though. I would read it. I would watch the videos. I would be curious about it and read the blogs and everything. But I was like, not me. Absolutely not. And then when our younger 3 children came, we just stopped everything. We wanted to just kind of mesh as a family of 8. And so we stopped all formal, learning and everything like that, and just bonded and had fun and enjoyed each other and got to know each other. And so, voila, it was a mistake. We actually became unschoolers on mistake. We kind of deschooled on mistake between death by workbook at homeschooling and unschooling. We kind of took the whole summer off, so we thought. And as we got closer to the fall to begin traditional schooling again, we began to see our kids teaching themselves things and teaching each other things that we, in a million years, would have never initiated. And they were just gathering all this knowledge, and they were having fun. And, they didn't know they were learning. They were just being kids and exploring, the world around them. And that's something that my husband and I began to observe, like, wait a second, this is kind of what we want. We want learning, life, and play to be one thing, that it not be these separate entities, that all these things can happen all at one time. And that was, let's see, going on 13 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, because
no, I'm sorry. No, almost 12 years ago that we transitioned from traditional homeschooling to unschooling. And so, and wow, I can't imagine doing anything else because of the results that we've had and the way that my kids have looked at gathering information and perfecting skills and just absorbing and enjoying learning versus it being a task and something, a necessary evil. And so it's yeah, exactly. So it's been a beautiful ride. It hasn't been perfect. I've had a couple kids that have struggled with it because of their learning style, and so I had to learn what their needs were. And one misconception of that is that it's void of curriculum, void of anything traditional, it couldn't be further from the truth. Void of structure even. And it's not void of structure. It's a different kind of structure created by the learner versus the teacher.
I like what you said, Karla, about it being a different kind of structure, because I think we talk about, Amanda and I both have neurodivergent learners, and I think sometimes there's this thing in the neurodivergent communities, like, my kids need structure, and we have a rhythm, we have a flow. It's not, we don't sit down at a desk at 8:30 in the morning, but we definitely have a flow. There's a predictability to our lives in a lot of ways. It just isn't looking necessarily like that. So, and I think part of that comes from the fact that in the unschooling world, there's a wide spectrum, just like anything else, right? So just like in homeschooling, you've got Amanda over here with her aggressive academics, and then you've got me over here being like, baking is learning, right? And so within the unschooling world, you have that same spectrum where you have people who are bringing in materials and things like that. And then you have people who are not doing that, who are literally letting everything, because I've joined a few unschooling Facebook groups and I've been like, whoa, I don't belong here, right? Like there's an extremity here that is not suiting me. So I'm curious what your like day to day, or maybe not day to day, but maybe even like week to week rhythm looks like, or did look like. I know you've graduated a few, so your rhythm is changing, but
Yeah.
when you were in the thick of it, what did it kind of look and feel like in your household, Karla?
Well, I had 6 kids and now I'm down to 1 for another year and then I'm done. I've launched 5 of them. 3 graduated in December, or launched, however you want to put it. Our days were not, and this is hard for people to understand, our days were never really the same. We had a rhythm, so to speak. Our mornings were kind of the same, the way that we got started in our morning, not on any particular timeline or schedule, but we kind of did things in the same order. And our evenings, unless we were away from the house for someone's practice or lesson or rehearsal or something, kind of followed the same flow as well. So our mornings and evenings stayed pretty consistent. It was that beautiful middle of the day where they had the choice to determine what they dove into. And it depends on the day what their choices were. My kids' interests were as far as the East is from the West. I mean, it's just extremely different. And so there were some things that we would do together, like I am passionate about read alouds. And so that can be kind of traditional. A lot of traditional homeschoolers do read alouds. Well, I tried that one time and it was like a hit. And so we did that for 10 years. um, and I myself, that was one of my favorite parts of homeschooling. And it's the part that I miss the most. I get a little teary eyed thinking about it, because it was a time when I had all my babies in one room and we were all focused on one thing and going on these adventures all over the world, different time periods and cultures and traditions and things. And so that was my favorite part. But we did read alouds pretty regularly. Our read alouds could take 6 weeks sometimes for one book, because we stopped and talked so often. Mom's a talker. 5 of the 6 kids were talkers. So we had things to say. We had questions to ask. We had things to Google in the midst of these books. So it wasn't just read and be done. We wanted to learn and absorb and figure out, the time period. Why was that? What kind of government was this? All of these things, right? So that was a major part of our day. And we would start there. We would start, we would do a, talk about scripture, for a few minutes before we started our read alouds. And then after that, we would just kind of work on helping out around the house. And after they were done with that, I asked them what their plans were for the day. And they normally had things planned long before the day began, right? So I was able to just kind of follow them around, whether they were outside, in the back, in the woods, in the basement, and figure out what it was that they were doing. Ask them if they needed any resources, giving them suggestions or ideas, help, assistance, encouragement for whatever it is that they were pursuing, projects that they were doing, experiments, research, whatever it was. So that's kind of how our days went. When it came to we're a very science heavy family. I myself was a zoology major, pre-med. And so for a moment until I changed, but I'm very passionate about science, and each of my kids had a different kind of science that they were passionate about. So we would do different projects together, obviously, because I didn't have 6 kids. But so those are some of the things that we would do together. We would do a lot of game schooling together. And a lot of the games that we played were very geography, and I guess you can say history, world history focused, language focused, obviously math regarding all of them. But so there were a few things that we would do together, but most of that time in the middle of the day, they chose what they did, and I kept track of what it was that they were choosing to do. And every day that could be different. And that doesn't mean that we
Did
were like,
you, in my house, we have a problem, quote unquote problem, where there's not enough hours in the day for that middle chunk of time, right? And it's
Mhm.
like there's too many interests. Do you have that with your kids?
No, because we never had a cutoff as to when you can do what. I mean, if it's Sunday at 2 and you want to do an experiment, go for it. If it has anything to do with fire or chemicals, mom or dad want to be present. But other than that, go for it. um, so there was no, that's just kind of how our day was structured, but it didn't mean that everything that you wanted to do had to fit within those, within a certain amount of time or a certain season, or, we were just year round learning, living, and playing. It just was part of who we are, what we do, how we live versus Monday through Friday, 8 to 3, August through May. All of those constructs were absent in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I think ours is more, there's so many interests that they want to go so
Mhm.
deep on that it's like, oh my God, you have to sleep at some point, right? Like you have to
Right.
stop and sleep at some point because this is the thing, right? Like the other night I'm sitting at my desk getting work done and I have a kid sending me, bookbinding classes from the American School of Bookbinding in Colorado, and it was like the 2024 classes are full, but I'm going to find out when they release the 2025 dates so I can jump. I'm like, okay, have fun. Just let me know what the dates are, like, right?
Right.
So it's like, oh, we're adding to the list. Okay, great. Right. So
Right.
there's always something kind of new and coming along. But so yeah, I love that you kind of had that set rhythm, like a start and a finish. There's a predictability to it, and then there's a lot of
Mhm.
time for experimentation and joyful learning in between, which is
One of the
pretty
things
interesting.
is, uh, you mentioned about, children that learn differently. We have, among my crew, we have, kid on the spectrum. We have dysgraphia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADHD, ADD, um, sensory processing. And we have all of that mixed up um, in what it is that we're trying to accomplish in a week. And so that kind of creates a whole nother element where
Mm-hmm.
I need to be present for certain things to help them express their brilliance in certain ways that may be outside of the norm. So, for instance, if I have a son with dysgraphia who is a world history buff that can hang with the best of them when it comes to world history, he, but writing it down, doing a report or anything like that is like, that would be torture. I would never do that to him. So what did he do? He created a YouTube channel and he fact checked all of his information, and then he made stop motion videos about him, about what it was that he was learning. Um, and then he or he would act it out in Minecraft and build, the historical monuments and things of that nature. So it just depends on which kid is into what at the time. And yes, there are lists and lists of interests, and I always make sure that they make annual goals. But even within that, I check in with them periodically. Are those still your goals? Is there something else that you're interested in pursuing? Do you want to stop pursuing this or taking lessons in this area? They have the autonomy and the choice to dive in a little, or to dive in deep. And we support them in whatever that is.
Mm-hmm. You brought up math a couple of minutes ago, Karla, in your explanation, and I feel like math is the thing that is like people are like we unschool except for math, or I would unschool, but then how will they ever know math, right? And I feel like people can let go of some of the other things a little bit more. I don't want to say easily because it is difficult to kind of cut that cord to the traditional
Mm-hmm.
system, but math seems to be like made of rebar when we talk about cutting the cord. Like it's like impossible to cut.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what math was like in your journey of unschooling.
I myself am not extremely confident in math. And so thankfully my husband is. But I'm the mom that would get to pre-algebra and then hand it all to him. He does anything algebra and higher with the kids that are pursuing a direction that is going to require that. And so math looked different for each of our kids. Um, I have two sons, my oldest son, who is 20, my youngest son, who is almost 15. They both are pursuing careers that are very math heavy and science heavy. And so the choices that they're making in what they're learning are going to set them up for those particular careers. And that's one of the things that we do. We make sure that as our kids are getting older and as they're kind of honing in on their natural skills and talents, that we help them figure out, okay, if this is a career path or at least a direction, an idea of a direction you want to go, if it's math and science heavy, then we're going to figure out what are the requirements for that. And then you're going to have to determine as the kid, do I want to do what it takes to reach that particular goal? So it kind of puts them in the driver's seat. Now, once they determine that they want to do that, then we allow them to choose the resource, because every resource doesn't fit every student, as you know. And so we allow them, do you want a workbook? Do you want a tutor? Do you want an actual class? You want an online class? You want to, self-paced? You want to self-teach? Videos, books, workbooks, what works for you? And then we kick into gear and we help them in any way that we can. And if it's something that we don't have the skill set to do, then we outsource and find somebody that can. So my oldest son, he chose to take Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry. My youngest son is choosing the same thing. And thankfully, my husband is strong in that area. So have at it. Because I get to have fun with everything else. But so the sciences and maths and things of that nature, that's how we approach it. I have several kids one son in particular, who is a musician, and didn't realize until he dove into music theory and everything that he was diving into math and science. And that's when math and science became more and more interesting to him. And that was like, 14? He was 14. Now he had done, obviously, we do living math with everyone. We do consumer math with everyone, because those are things that everyone is going to need no matter what direction they go. And so everybody knows how to do their taxes, how to, purchase a home, purchase a car, investments, banking, just all of those things. Everybody gets that. And we do it in a very non-traditional manner, but everybody gets that information. We have those conversations and projects and things that we work with them on before they leave the nest, so to speak. But for those going into areas that require higher levels maths, then we make sure that they have what they need to succeed in those areas. But we don't really, I would say we really don't start the formal until like after the age of 12. Everything up to that point, and my husband and I made a list of all living math skills we wanted them to be able to do. And we figured out how to work those into life.
Yeah. I have a friend too. So I think what'll happen is there'll be people who will say like, well, my kid doesn't have a clue what they want to do, right? So you're saying my kids have an idea of what they might want to do, so we're working backwards from that. And I think we'll end up with so many people that say, well, my kid has no idea what they want to do, and so I'm giving them the broad spectrum of everything because I'm covering my bases, right? But so I mentioned earlier that I had kind of two unschooling people that I kind of looked at and said, okay, this is working for their kids. Their kids are older than mine and it's working, right? So Karla was one, and then I have another friend, and her kiddo decided at like 19 that he wanted to go into something flight related, and it was going to be heavy math. And not only wanted to go into something flight related, but like the best school there was for the thing he wanted to do too, right? Like it wasn't like dipping his toe in the water. It was like, I'm going to go to that school that's like impossible to get into. And so he was doing like a 4-month backpacking Europe thing with somebody and signed himself up for like an intensive math class online that was kind of like an SAT prep style thing, maybe, where it went through, kind of the full range of stuff, and aced it, came back, got into the school, right? Because it was tied to a learning objective. It was tied to a goal. And there really wasn't a time where it was too late to learn it, right? It was like, oh, well, now this becomes important. I'm going to defer my goal for 4 months. I'm going to back fill in the information that I need, get it done quickly, do it well because it's important to me, and then do the thing. So yeah, she told me that story, and it kind of put me at ease as I was kind of cutting my last tethers to traditional learning, and was like, it's fine. They can just, if they have a gap, we all have gaps, first of all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I like Karla, you were talking about math. Amanda and I talk about the fact we are not math people, right? I had 16 years of incredibly formal, high level education. I stink at math, right? Like it doesn't, being unschooled, being homeschooled, going to the world's greatest school, you could still come out, you're still going to have gaps. But our kids can fill those gaps if it's important to them, I think. So I love
When there
that
is a
approach that you
goal,
took.
yeah. Every year we sit down and we ask them to create goals for themselves. And those goals can be anywhere from buying an Xbox to getting a new job or a promotion on a job or saving money to purchase a car, as all of my kids do. It's those goals are tied to what they ultimately want to do. Now, to answer that question, every kid is not going to know what they want to do. Or you might have a kid that thinks they know and they change. Information isn't going anywhere. You can learn what you need to learn at any point. And you can change directions at any point. And I've had, I have one child in particular, my youngest daughter, who has been all over the place the last 3-4 years. And she went from fashion design to wanting to join the police academy. And we're like, what? But
got a bit of parental whiplash there. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, wait, hold it. Because we had gotten to the point, we did she designed and sewed and had models and fashion suits and selling purses and clothes and all kinds of things online to all of a sudden wanting to be a crime scene investigator. And obviously she would have to start at the police academy level. But my husband and I sat down and we were like, okay, how does this all connect? We were thinking about the level of creativity you have to solve crimes. We thought about the level of, she's always been passionate about history and passionate about law and crime and the mind of a criminal and all of these kinds of things. And I'm like, okay, it's always been there. We were just focused in so much over here that we didn't pay attention to the fact that this over here was it was kind of creeping up and becoming more and more prominent. And so as they change, we change with them. I myself am on my 4th career and loving it and wouldn't take back any experience. And so I tell parents, if your kid has danced for 10 years and suddenly doesn't want to dance, that doesn't make it a waste of money or a waste of time or experience. All of those skills are building towards something, even if you can't see it yet. Even if it's not obvious or unrelated, it is still valuable experience. So never think that because they changed their mind or their direction, that it was all wasted or, that they could have been doing something else all that time. They were doing what they needed to do in the moment. And, those skills will benefit them, even if it's confidence, the confidence to do whatever it is that they need to do. So, kids they're born to learn. You can't stop them from learning. It's just part of who we are as people. And I'm all the way back at the beginning again because I have a grandson and he's with me all summer. He's actually downstairs right now. He's 8 months old and I'm just watching him learn. And I'm like, oh my God. And if you know my family, my children are all adopted. I've only had one infant. Everybody else was between the ages of 2 and 6. So this is only my 2nd time, even though I have 6 kids, going through these baby stages. And I am just like in awe.
It's a whole new world.
It is, at seeing them, just seeing him learn and pick up things and just figure things out. And I'm like, we're born to do this. We need to trust our kids to be able to do that.
Oh, I love that. I do want to throw out a quick disclaimer that we're not ignoring Amanda. Amanda seems to be having some tech issues today. So whoever's watching on the replay, they're going to be like, gosh, they never let her talk. We keep getting all sorts of things saying that Amanda's not recording and she's having browser issues and all kinds of stuff keep popping up on my end. And I'm like, if it was just Amanda and I recording, we would scrap it and try again tomorrow. But with Karla here, we're like, we're soldiering on. So We love you, Amanda. I don't know if you'll be in the recording or not, but
And that's it. I might be here. I might not. I'm getting the same ones. Like,
yeah.
try this, try that. Like, you're recording now. So I'm like, maybe I'm recording. Maybe she's going to be able to splice me in at certain parts. I have no idea what's happening. So
I know. We'll figure it out. Thankfully, Amanda and I share a Google Doc and she put her questions in. So I'm like, I'll ask them so that they're there. And, Amanda, you can just like kind of drink your tea and look cute and do your thing,
see if I show up in the videos or not.
Exactly. We'll find out. All right. I have a question for you, Karla, that might be a little bit controversial. We might ruffle some feathers here with this one. Can you
I'm used to that.
unschool? I like it, right? Yeah. We're not about tiptoeing in this podcast. Can you unschool part-time? Can you have because I see things like, well, Friday's our unschooling day. Right? Or we unschool in the summer, right? There's a group, I'm in the Facebook group, and I don't want to call them out, but it's like for part-time unschoolers, basically, right? And so I'm like, what are can you part-time unschool? Is that a thing? I know we're gonna piss some people off.
Yeah, the question. Yeah, I know. I can just hear it now.
We've called HSLDA the evil giant, and like all this stuff. So right, I mean, we just say it. So go for it. You're good. You're in good company for saying it.
I'm just gonna say it. The answer is, I don't know if you can hear my drum roll. No. And let me tell you why. And there's unschooling is a mentality. It's a lifestyle more than a learning style. And so it is a way of thinking about learning overall, if that makes any sense. And so when someone says that, in my head, I'm just like, okay, so you're an eclectic homeschooler. You just you pull from different elements and different philosophies and do things differently depending upon the time of year, the time of week, whatever it is. But that would not necessarily be considered unschooling. You're just an eclectic homeschooler, or you do your own thing, or you pull from, I don't always get so tied up in the title, because I know the word unschooling, the on the front is just like, people can't get with that. My husband had a hard time. He was like, anything sounds unnatural. Can we get rid of the un? So, for a long time, I called it interest-led learning, but the closest thing to what it is that we do is unschooling. It is a mentality. It's an overall mentality and thought process regarding how natural learning occurs through living and the pursuit of interest. And so if you say, I'm unschooling on Friday, okay, does that mean that your entire thought process regarding learning changed just on Friday? Probably not. It just means you decided on Friday to do things a little differently. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Nobody's going to tell you that you have to do this every day, or you can only do it on Tuesday from 4 to 8. Just, you don't have to worry about being in a certain category. Just do what is working for your family. And what I'm just here to say is this works for my family. And if you want to try it, I'd love to help you do it too. If it doesn't work for your family, that's okay as well. But you don't have to force yourself to fit into a category to please the invisible masses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think too, sometimes I see posts where people say like, we're trying out homeschooling on the weekends to see if we want to do it next year. And I think of it along the same lines. I'm like, you can't try out homeschooling I know, right? You never get a day off, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, trying out homeschooling on the weekends or trying out homeschooling during summer break is not going to give you the same indicator of what it's actually going to be like, or whether it's going to work for your family, as just deschooling and then figuring out kind of what your long-term goals are, how you want to approach it, stuff like that, right? Like it's not, I just don't think most of it is dabbling.
Step one to make your kids miserable.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Could you imagine if as an adult you were like, so you're really burnt out with work and you're going to go ahead and take this vacation, and on vacation, try this new career and let me know how it goes, like.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or start a business during the summer as a teacher,
No problem. Easy. Just squeeze it in there.
Yeah, it's not ideal, and it's just not going to give you the indicators that you're looking for if you're trying that. Like, it is scary, but just take the leap and do it, right? There's very few people that jump in and go, wow, that was a giant mistake, I shouldn't be doing this. And I would venture to say that if you do have those feelings, that if you, like you, Karla, like at the beginning, death by workbook, right? Like, if you do jump in and you're like, wow, this is awful, maybe I shouldn't have done this, if you change something, if you tweak something, if you adjust, it wouldn't be awful anymore, right? Like, you've got to be open to that level of flexibility.
Well, I always suggest to people, there's two ways to transition from doing one thing to another. I am a cold turkey person. My husband and I are like that, which is really good. It may look dangerous to other people because we will dive into something blind, and it always turns out just fine. But I tell you, onlookers are like, you're nuts. It's, like adopting two sibling groups of three, at once. Just give us three. Okay, can you give us three more? That's just who we are. Just we'll take all of the transition at once. So we're cold turkey people. People that can't find themselves doing that, I would suggest let go of what you can let go of right now. Or should I say, let go of the control of it. Try something new in the areas that are not going to give you anxiety first, and then slowly work your way till you're getting to math. Because that's always the last one people let go of. And it doesn't mean they let go of it. It means that they recognize that their children are getting it in other ways, and that they're confident that their kids have the ability to learn and to grow and to obtain the information and bodies of knowledge that they need when they need it and how they need it. But it's hard to get there for some people, and they're not cold turkey people. And so you have to kind of go with, and you also have to figure out where your spouse is, if you're married, where they are on their comfort level. Because I would never suggest a traditionally homeschooling family to dive into unschooling and dad is like, absolutely not. Because one of the number one things that you want to do as a family is have that cohesive vision, and you want to have peace in the home, right? And the best gift you can give your kids is peace between mom and dad. And so there's so many elements to consider, when you're diving into something new and something that seems drastic. So, just work it how it works for you and not take anyone else's template.
Yeah, so I took my quizzes when I started homeschooling way back when, and they all said I was an unschooler. And I was like, that we're not doing that. That's ridiculous. And so we went project-based learning, right? And we would pick a topic. And I have 3 kids that are all within 4 years of each other. So they were all really close in age and all of that, And sometimes it would be around an event. Like, we were going to go to homeschool days at Colonial Williamsburg. So we did a whole deep dive going into that. I got this book at the library about life in colonial times, and we made candles, and we there were recipes in there. We made a dinner that was those recipes, and we ate by candlelight. And so we were project-based learning, right? But every once in a while I would have these panics, and I would like sign them up for a solace and like be like, just do this so I can sleep at night. Like, I don't really care, but you have to do the thing, like, just so I can sleep. And then finally I was just like, this is ridiculous. And the main reason I felt it was ridiculous was because the kids would ask me questions. They'd be like, Mom, what's a past present participle? I'd be like, I don't know. Like, and they're like, well, if you don't even know, why do we have to learn it? And I'm like, that's an awesome question. I'm not sure, right? Like, I was here at this huge pharmaceutical company. I had a big career, and I'm like, but I didn't remember all these little nuanced terms, and I didn't remember trigonometry, and I didn't remember. And they were like, so why are we learning this stuff? And I was like, I know, I see the hypocrisy in what I'm asking you to do. I see it, but it just took me a little while to get there,
It's funny. My kids kind of have two extreme examples between myself and my husband. I'm a college dropout, and my husband is in the process, less than a year away from having his PhD. And so we have these massive, extreme differences in how we have pursued our goals. And neither one of us would change what we're doing. I love what it is that I do. I get to go all over the world and do it. And my husband loves what it is that he's doing and what he will be doing as a result of his PhD. And so it's like they have these two extremes. I can go, I cannot go, but I can still pursue the things that I dream of doing regardless. And so, and our kids kind of need to know that, that everybody doesn't have to fit into this mold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's worked out among my 6 too. Some have decided to go to college. Some have decided to do tech school, military, police academy, go right into the workforce and work their way up. I mean, there's so many different perspectives on how they're pursuing their careers.
And aside from the military option, you're not like signing a blood oath to do something, right? I mean, the military, there's some contractual obligation there, but like the other side, you can shift, you can change gears if something's not working, right? And even with the military, you can, you just have to wait a certain period of time, right?
Right.
You just can't decide to do that tomorrow, but you've got that. I feel like sometimes when there's conversations about unschooling, people are like, that's awesome until you get to high school and then no can do, right? Like, how am I going to do a transcript? How are they ever going to get into college? How are we going to do any of these things? What do you think? I mean, I know you did it all the way through. So if somebody has those fears, Karla, what do you say?
Let me tell you. I've done it from when they were very small up to high school, and I would choose high school anytime because unschooling younger kids is chaos. They're all over the place, and it's fun and it's exciting, but it's messy and chaotic, and there's no focus. It's just like, I want to learn this, and this all in one day. I mean, it's just a lot, especially when you have 6 of them all over the place wanting to learn all the things. And so it's just chaotic. But the older they get, it's not that they necessarily know exactly what they want to do, because you don't have to. Nobody's requiring your kids to know what they want to do with the rest of their life. They don't. That's too much pressure for any kid, for any young adult, even to know what they want to do with the rest of their life. I always tell my kids, you only need to know what you want to do next. Because even for adults, what do we want to do next may be completely unrelated to what we're doing now. And so why are we holding our kids to a standard to choose what they want to do for the next 40 years? It's just bananas. There's no reason why we need to do that to them. But for high school, even if they don't know an exact career, you have pretty much peeped out their natural gifts and talents. You know if you have an artist. You know if you have a musician, what they're going to do with that skill and that talent, you have no idea. You know if you have a science-heavy kid or a math-heavy kid or a historical buff. You know what I mean? These are things that kind of emerge as they get older. And so we encourage those things, but I also make sure that I am constantly or have constantly, exposed them to new things all the time. Because you have people, well, my kids don't have any interest. It's not true. If they're alive, they have interest. If they're not showing any prominent interest because they haven't seen it, experienced it, or touched it yet. So keep exposing them to new things, or as random and as crazy as the things may be within your belief system and your values, obviously. But it's just very, very important that you continually expose them to new things, because that's how they know what they love and what they don't love. In high school, the teen years for me were easier because my kids were more focused on who they were and what they had to offer the world. And so it made it easier on us as parents to be able to hone in and really wrap around those interests and talents with different kinds of experiences, versus when they were little, where it's, dinosaurs one day, trains the next day, turtles the next day. It's just all kinds of things, which is great because they're learning new things. But as they get older, it's easier to focus and really, wrap around them with the resources they need to grow. So.
I hadn't thought about it like that. It's so true, right? I mean, mine are pretty dialed into certain things, and I'm finding the teen years exhausting from the perspective that the questions are bigger, the feelings are bigger. When they have a need, it involves more research, because if they do need to loop me in on something, it's a deep, like they've already done all the surface level stuff and now they're looping me in. So now it's like really deep so I have found it tiring from that perspective. But you're right. It's more focused and it's more dialed in. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. I have a theory when you say too that people say, oh, my kids don't have any interest. I also have a theory. I don't know if you've experienced this because you interact with so many people in the unschooling world, that sometimes the kids have an interest, but they don't share it with the parents because the parents constantly turn their interests into work and chores. Do you find that to be
Yes.
a situation sometimes?
I've had that happen in my own home. I had my daughter hide some of her interest from me because she felt like I was going to go nuts and try to turn it into her future work. And so she didn't share it with me. Or, there's been a time where I have a kid ask a question and suddenly I'm ready to sign them up for 5 lessons and get, a stack of 20 books on it from the library. They're like, I just asked a question. It was just something I wanted to know in the moment. I don't want to do this as a career. I'm not interested in diving, deep into this. So yes, I have found that a lot of times as parents, we lose our mind once our kids show an aptitude for something or a skill or a talent that really is kind of fleeting, but we see them, they play, 3 Blind Mice on the piano and we're like Kennedy Center, here we come. It's like, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. I saw somebody one day that was like, oh, we're going to these couple of state parks this summer. Like, does anybody have worksheets for the state parks? And I was like, the state park is the learning experience, right? Like, please don't kill the state park with a worksheet. Please. I was like, right.
Save the trees in the state
park. My kids
park.
never want to go anywhere and never want to do anything. And I'm like, right, exactly. And I'm like, no, your kids love going places. They hate the fact that you turn it into a chore, right? Like, that's why they don't want to go to that place.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
My
all
kids
right,
are
Amanda,
all
how's your
passionate.
internet doing?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, same. I mean, yeah.
My kids are,
I'm like,
they're all
need more
passionate
hours in the day.
readers, but they don't. But when way back in the day, I tried to turn their reading into book reports. They all stopped.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, and there's been studies done on the fact that book logs are like the death of reading. Like, why are we are on the whole raising a generation of kids that aren't reading the way previous generations did. Well, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing book reports. We're doing reading logs. We're doing AR tests. We're doing, we've made reading a chore. We've made reading a lot of work in a lot of cases. And if you have a kid who
Mm-hmm.
loves writing book reports, that's awesome, because there's some kids who are just really great. They like to be able to funnel their thoughts that way, but some kids don't, and they don't all have to do it. Amanda's got a question here. Amanda, do you feel confident in your internet to ask your question?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's working for right now. So,
okay.
In my personal experience, right, the adult unschoolers who have grown and gone on into the world that I know really have a hard time sticking things out, right? Even when they've made a commitment, they're really quick to bounce on to the next thing or, just kind of let it go. And they often don't think that deadlines apply to them. Like, oh, I'll get it done when I get it done and it'll be fine. And so I'm curious, how, and again, I'm old, I'm in my 40s. And so like, this is not the current, what unschooling looks like currently. Right. But how do you find the balance and help your children learn to thrive in a world that is a bit more structured and scheduled than maybe their formative educational years were?
I'll tell you this. One of the things that I am a proponent of is teens working, teens having jobs. And when our kids turn 14, 15 years old, the first thing they do is apply for a job. And I have found that even if they got up at noon for years before they started working a job, magically, without my force, without my encouragement, they are getting up at 8 o'clock to get to work on time. We haven't had any issue with that. They've learned deadlines. They've learned all of these things that people are afraid that they won't learn. But between volunteering, between volunteering at church and volunteering in organizations, between projects and classes and lessons that they've taken that have required some kind of deadline or performance or practice, and jobs. I have found that my kids have done very well in being able to find their way in the world in a way that they can fall into those habits and patterns without too much of a problem. So I think that giving your kids outlets where they are working with other people, they're working in team environments, they are working on projects with other people. Like I have a son that is in his 4th year of competitive robotics. Well, that is all about team building and teamwork and where you have to be, when you have to be, there's like 5 different categories of people working on this one project, and everybody has to work together and have their things done to be able to, you have the coders, you have the builders, you have the wirers. And so they've always been involved in things like that when it comes to their interests, as well as having a job, that it just kind of happened for them. And you might have had, the people that you're speaking of, some of it might also be personality. Some of it may be their unschooling experience and the fact that they didn't have those kinds of elements involved during their teen years to kind of help them learn how to, work in a work environment. So I can't really speak to it being an unschooling issue, more of a experience issue. Not having the experiences that require that of them.
I'm curious. I find in a lot of this is super anecdotal. I have not run studies on this, but I find unschooling works really well for neurodivergent kids, right? That because the structure of school does not. And so some of what you're describing, Amanda, to me rings more of neurodivergence than it does of like it's like a chicken or the egg, there's like a Venn diagram situation happening there, maybe, because so I am like Karla talked about, being like a rip off the Band-Aid, like throw yourself in kind of decision maker, right? I am a stick it through person, right? Like even I'm in a bunch of Facebook group for books, and there's all these people that don't finish books. If they don't like a book, they don't finish it. I wish I was one of those people. I will suffer through a book because I will finish that book, right? And it'll take me a month, but I will get to the end, because what if it gets better, right? And so I am not somebody who gives up on things. Like I will put my head down and forget to eat and forget to go to the bathroom and get the thing done, right?
Mm-hmm.
My oldest child is not that, right? And and he would change all the time. Like you were saying, Amanda, like it would be like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm here, I'm there. And I just remember looking at him and thinking, this child is a giant flake. Like he can't stick with anything. He's all over the place. And I found a TED Talk, that Emily Wapnick TED Talk. I think I'm pronouncing their name properly. The one about like, what if people don't have one true calling, I think is like the title of the TED Talk. And Emily uses the term multi-potentialite. So, and it shifted my entire view on this kid of mine, where I was like, oh, his brain just works differently than mine, right? Like he's not going to put his head down and laser focus on something until it's done. He's going to dabble here and dabble there and dabble here. And in the TED Talk, Emily gave such great justice as to like why that type of thinking is okay, why it's welcome in the world, why it's necessary in the world. And if you're not that person, that's okay. But I had a really hard time with that, because I thought my kid is all over the place. Like I can't keep up, And so part of me wonders how much of that is neurodivergence too, as far as like that he'd be that way no matter how he was educated, because that's just who he is, right? And it frustrates him even to an extent. And he's like, I feel like sometimes I want to stick with something, but like I can't figure out how to, And I'm like, well, that's a classic sign of raging ADHD. So I'm just saying, like it's like part of that is just your brain wiring, and you can decide to work on it or you can decide to embrace it, but you've got some choices there, pal. But so I wonder if there's like a little Venn diagram, chicken or the egg situation happening there with the experience you've had and the type of people who are naturally drawn to unschooling also.
I think it's probably in my specific case, I think it's probably more a little too much reliance on John Holt and how they started their whole, like a commune in the to do their unschooling and what that all looked like without a lot of responsibility, kind of just in life in general, right? Because
More feral.
I'm definitely a multi-potential. Yeah, exactly. More of that like radical unschooling and then trying to go into a more traditional world and struggling to find that. But
living like Mowgli in a traditional world.
Yeah, a little, and so, I mean, I think it's that, from that regard, it probably has more to do with that spectrum of unschooling, right? And whether or not you're radically unschooling and saying like, look, we're not ever going to provide classes or push you to do these kinds of things versus saying, look, we're going to unschool, but what are your goals? What are you working towards? What do you want to do and achieve, and checking in on that constantly instead of being like, hey, you're good. Like, have fun.
I mean, I joined a Facebook group one time, and listen, just because it's not for me doesn't make it wrong. I'm not judging what someone else chooses to do. But I joined a Facebook group one time, and I'd been unschooling for a while at that point, and I was just like a giant fish out of water. Like, there were people in there whose kids were like 7, 8 years old who weren't potty trained because they were like just waiting for them to figure it out on their own. There wasn't like a push or, I mean, and that was like the extreme version of unschooling. And I'm like, hey, whatever, if that's working for you, you do you. But I was like, this is not my group. These are not my people, right? And so, yeah, I mean, there is that spectrum, right, Amanda? And so you might have encountered one of the, you should, for fact, just ask people from now on at what age they were potty trained, and then maybe you'll have the better age. That could be your 10? Conversation opener. Yeah, and be like, okay, I have an idea of how now I know on a scale of 1 to 10 how unschooly you are, right? And then you're like, oh, now I got it. It's good,
And the closer to 10 you potty train, the closer to the radical unschooling you are. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like, they're still not using utensils. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's fine, I mean.
And that's it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I have these personal experiences, and it does not work for me. It's not a comfortable place for me to live and exist. But that doesn't mean that it can't be comfortable for you. If you have found a way to succeed and be happy in the world, by all means, go rock it out. I just didn't want to be married to it, right?
Well, this has been wonderful. We want to talk about a resource that we want to throw out there because Karla's got some exciting stuff to share with us. Before we do that, I just want to do a quick invite. Amanda, do you want to tell our listeners what we decided to do yesterday, and what we created, and where they can find us on Facebook? Hint, hint.
Yeah, because we're not busy enough and because we don't have enough irons in the fire, we decided to start a new Facebook group. So you should totally come join us in our Facebook group. You can search Homeschool Moms Unfiltered, or as always, we have the link in both our podcast description and in our Instagram bio. But come join us. You have to promise to be kind. But other than that, we're generally pretty open and accepting. We want people to come as their authentic selves. And so definitely come find us. We have a new Facebook.
Yeah, come hang out with us. I love it. Well, it is time for our segment of the week.
Recommended resources. Do you need more homeschool supplies? No. Are you going to want these anyway? Absolutely.
All right. So the wonderful Karla Marie Williams has a giveaway for us. Karla, what are you offering to give away to one of our lucky, amazing winners?
Actually, I would like to give them a set of my books on homeschooling/unschooling. The first is my very first book, published in 2018, Homeschool Gone Wild. And to accompany that would be Teens Unleashed, which is actually the, I guess you can say, the second book of the series on unschooling. And so I think that anybody would be encouraged. Any homeschooler can enjoy it. There are ideas and inspiration there for anyone that is learning alongside their children at home. And you'll be able to get inspired and get some new ideas.
I love it. So there is a link in the description for our podcast. Again, it's in the Facebook group. It's on the Instagram bio, the link tree. I mean, it's everywhere, right? But enter by July 31st. And we will be pulling one lucky winner based in the US to mail out 2 of Karla's books. So thank you so much, Karla. Who does not love
Yes.
books? I mean, it's like the way to a homeschooler's heart, right? Free books. Hello. Right? We're in. And then speaking of Facebook communities, I am a member of your Facebook community, Karla. Where can people find you online?
Well, I am under simply Karla Marie on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And then I have a private Facebook group, which is called Homeschool Gone Wild Unschooling Community. And we have about 10,000, close to 11,000 members in that group from all over the world. And so we talk all things unschooling, interest-led learning, hands-on learning there. The members are from anywhere from people just dipping their toes into the water of unschooling all the way to radical unschoolers. And so we have quite a spectrum of learning perspectives and ideas for the people that join.
And it is a kind, welcoming group. Sometimes you join a group and it feels a little bit like Lord of the Flies, and Karla's group is not like that. So I don't last long in the Lord of the Flies.
I don't play
groups,
that.
No. Not at all. It's a lovely group.
I'm on it.
With a super, yes, helpful admins, kind admins. So it's a really nice group. Come hang out with Karla on Facebook. Well, Karla, thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to ask Amanda to close us out with our mantra for the week. But thank you so much for coming and taking the time to share your experience with us and your knowledge and your expertise. And we'll be excited to be giving away your books to one of our lucky listeners soon.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much for joining it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really. Okay, so our mantra this week, we've got, I am fearlessly herding cats through the maze of knowledge, and there's no map but the one we create.
I feel like that goes really well with the theme of unschooling for the day, right? Let's create our own map.
Yeah.
It works really well. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Karla, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.